Well, hello. Today we are here to talk about my favorite mysteries of 2025. I say, best favorite. It's kind of hard to classify how subjective this list is or isn't. We'll probably go with favorite because I think there are some controversial choices on here. And as I mentioned in a recent vlog, I will say that this year has been a tough one for me in mystery thriller because I found that a lot of the kind of traditional mystery thriller offerings or things that were on my TBR were they were like fine to good, but not great. And actually I found most of my list from genre blends. So on this list, you're gonna see a lot of sci-fi mystery, fantasy mystery, there's a romance mystery on here, and only a couple of kind of classic whodunits, though I definitely had some classic mysteries that I loved as well, which we will talk about. But yeah, so horror thriller, like we got a melange of types of mysteries. I'm very I think this is a great list in terms of the books that are on here, but it is a little unusual for me. So yeah, anyway, just something I observed. I don't know if that was strictly what was getting published in 2025 or what I just happened to pick up, but that is what I observed this year. So we'll start at number 10 and work our way to number 1. Number 10 is a romantic mystery. And that is And Then There Was One by Martha Waters. I got a couple that I was kind of debating about what to put in at this number 10 slot. Every time I go on vacation, someone dies. Everyone this Christmas is a suspect. Too old for this. There's a few that I was like, oh, I thought these were really fun, just like good time books that might not be that deep, but I just had a good time in. And I decided out those I thought the best quality was And Then There Was One. This is a historical romance with a whodunit mystery plot. The setup is that it's a town, a little English town where a bunch of people have died and it's becoming a murder town, capital M, capital T, with tourism associated with it. And it turns out that most of the mystery solving is the daughter of sort of the lord of the town. She lives in the hall, and she thinks that there's something more going on than meets the eye. She writes to a famous sleuth a la Hercule Poirot, and he sends his assistant instead. And from there, a romance ensues. He's kind of a dandy man about town, foppish. She's more reserved, a little grumpier, so they have a fun interplay. I think that it's a fun romance, and I think the mystery is just a really solid kind of Midsummer Murders type mystery. So I think it's a nice blend between the two genres. I think if you're a romance fan who likes mystery, you'll like it. If you're a mystery fan who's open to some romance, I think you'll also like this. And it was just a good time that I thought was well executed. Next is a romantic suspense, which is from Nora Roberts, called Hidden Nature. And this is a classic Nora Roberts romantic suspense. It has a long build-up to the actual kind of point of tension. If you're wondering kind of what the vibe of these books are, the movie from the 90s, I can never remember the name of it, but the Julia Roberts one where she escapes her abusive husband and then he's like tracking her. Oh, Sleeping with the Enemy, that's what it's called. That is the vibe of these books. So if you like that kind of a slow burn where the suspense is really building up, this one, I think in its structure was very similar to The Obsession, which is my favorite Nora Roberts book. And it is a park ranger, I forget what they're called, but it's like the National Park Police in Western Maryland. Our heroine is shot in the line of duty. While she's recovering, she uncovers or sees a connection between these various crimes that are happening kind of across the rural area of the Eastern Seaboard, and she starts trying to put a case together that it's a serial killer. Meanwhile, to recover, she's back in her small town, and love is ensuing while she's kind of putting together the serial killer investigation, and we see the serial killers realizing she's closing in on them, and the tension escalates. So I think it's a really good example of what Nora Roberts does well. If you want to get a flavor of kind of what her deal is, I think this would be a good book to do that. And yeah, I just really love her kind of formula for romantic suspense. Number 8 is The Midnight Knock by Jonathan Fram, which I would describe as a horror thriller. If you read the back of this book, I think you, or at least the impression I had, was that it was going to be something very similar to a typical isolated closed circle mystery where you have characters in a remote area, somebody gets killed, you have to figure out who done it before you get got. All-time favorite formula. Strictly speaking, that is a part of what is happening in this book, but I would say the overall tone of this is much more of a paranormal thriller. The back copy does have a comp to Blake Crouch, who I've only read one book from. Wasn't my cup of tea, but I see the comparison in terms of there's sort of a sci-fi speculative element. And I would say that this definitely includes horror. So I'm going to land on horror thriller for the genre of this, maybe horror, or maybe paranormal thriller. I will say that I think that there is, I had some question marks around the representation of Native American culture in this book, but if I kind of put a pin in that, overall, I found this to be incredibly page-turning, very pulpy, fun, just really grabs you by the collar and keeps you in. I will say that it does have a lot of repetition, and I can't get into exactly why that is because it would be a spoiler, but let's just say if you're a typical mystery fan, you know that kind of rhythm where when they're chasing down the clues, they're kind of retreading them a lot. That was how I took the repetition in this book, but I know that other readers found that that was tedious. For me, I felt like they were just like narrowing in on what was going on. But yeah, I could not put this one down, and I just found, yeah, like I said, it was just it was a very fun, propulsive read for me. And then I would say my top 4-star at number 7 is going to be The Marble Hall Murders by Anthony Horowitz. This is a much more classic whodunit than some of the other things on this list, though it does contain a book within a book, which I love, that kind of metatextual detail. And this one is the third in a trilogy. I will say that it is, in my opinion, the weakest of the three. I think the second book is the best one, which is The Moonflower Murders. The second best one is the first book, which is The Magpie Murders. And then this is The Marble House Murders. I think it's the weakest just because, how to say without spoiling. Our main character, Susan Ryland, was a book editor. That's why there is this book within the book component, because each book is kind of mirroring or is resonating with an Atticus Pound book that she has edited. So the books themselves, I think, they have clues as to the kind of framing mystery. In this case, I don't believe this is how the other two books worked. We don't get the full novel during, it's broken up a lot more. We're going in and out of the novel. I believe in the other two, you have the full book within the book, and then you come back to the framing device. Somebody can correct me if I'm misremembering that, but that's my memory, which I think is a more effective way to do this kind of plot. I just felt like coming in and out of it so much took away a lot of the tension, and also just she's had so much stuff happen to her over the course of the books. It just felt like it kind of heightened to a somewhat absurd place. But with that aside, this is just again, that Midsummer Murders, he actually used to write for Midsummer Murders. That's sort of just kind of classic detective-y kind of mystery. That's what these are. It really scratches a whodunit kind of itch. So I still really enjoyed this one. Even if it technically is my least favorite in the series, I still would recommend the series as a whole. Okay, now we are into 4.5-star territory, which for me, a 4.5 is a favorite of the year. A 5-star is an all-time favorite. So 4.5 stars, I'm going to give number 6, The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. I love Janice Hallett. I love her project. They are always very mixed media type mysteries, where she's using emails and text messages and maps and floor plans and, various detritus to tell the story. I just love her style. I think really, again, it's really scratching that kind of whodunit type satisfying mystery in a way that I just found wonderful. I will say that I wonder if other people would like this as much as I did, because I do think the beginning is quite slow, but I think it builds very satisfyingly, and it was totally worth the build in my opinion. The concept of this is that we have a gentleman who is writing into sort of like a Netflix type production studio, trying to get them to write make a true crime documentary about his aunt and uncle and what happened to them at their pub a few years prior. And it is centered around a pub quiz night, which I just think is so fun. This is probably a gift for someone in my family who loves pub quizzes, just because I thought that was a fun element of this. And we're slowly finding out like what even happened to his aunt and uncle, because it's not totally clear. It's not clear how the quiz plays into it. And it just, I thought this was so fun. Just, I always find her books so page turning. Yeah, I just love this. It was great. Then number 5, I should say almost all of these for the rest of this list are either sci-fi or fantasy mystery. Number 5 is a fantasy mystery, A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the follow-up to The Tainted Cup, which came out last year. And these are set in a fantasy world that... So, okay, you could read this as a standalone, but I don't think you should, because one of the interesting parts of the world gets revealed in the first book. So I don't want to tell you too much about what the deal is with this fantasy world, but let's just say that people have, one of the things going on is different people have different sort of like preternatural talents. And our 2 main characters are definitely a Sherlock and Watson type duo. The Watson type has a kind of talent where they can go into a room and remember literally every single thing about it. They're like a recording, basically, of the room. And then the Sherlock type has the ability to is just like an uber investigator, to the point where they can't even, like, they have to wear a blindfold most of the time because they just get sensory overload from everything they're deducing all of the time. And this one in particular has kind of like some cult elements in it that I thought were fun. It's definitely building off of what we found out about this pair and their dynamic in the first book. It has some good reveals. And I just thought that it's, not a short book, but it's not too long. And it just cracked along at a really good pace and really kept me engaged throughout. It's taking place in this sort of grimy seaside town. I thought that was very evocative and interesting. Yeah, I just thought this was even better than the first book. Like I said, I guess you could start with this one, but I would say just go read the first book and then read this one. But yeah, I thought that this was really satisfying as a mystery, in addition to the interesting fantasy element. Number 4 is both a surprise and not a surprise, I guess, because this is kind of a comeback story. So I gave 4.5 stars to Royal Gambit by Daniel O'Malley. Now, the first book in this series, The Rook, which is back here, is one of my all-time favorite books. I absolutely love it. It is a fantasy mystery, kind of like an urban fantasy mystery, I guess, where there is this secret world of, again, kind of supernatural or preternatural talents that this shadow government of different countries of our world, most notably the UK, that's kind of what this follows. There's a shadow government of all these people with different, like, extreme talents. And the first one, the premise is somebody wakes up in the body of one of the people who's one of the top ministers in this shadow government, and they don't know how they got there, and they have to figure out what in the world is going on and who killed the original person in the body and all that stuff. And I love it. It's a 5-star, one of my all-time favorite books. The next 2 books both were really interesting. Like, they had interesting things in them. They had set pieces I enjoyed, but I just really didn't feel like they came together as books fully. I think I gave both of them 3 stars. But then this, I feel like we were finally back to a more focused plot that was linear and really scratched the kind of mystery component while building on the world and having new interesting things going on. In this one, we have a member of the British aristocracy who is one of these very special people who, once they realize that she is special, they raise her to be kind of a member of the outward-facing royal family's inner circle, so that she's essentially a built-in kind of like bodyguard / spy. And something happens where she's essentially activated, and she's got to figure out who did the thing that causes her to be activated, what's going on, and she's got to try to protect the new heir to the throne, who's this princess who's just finding out who she is and her, like, why she's been her friend all these years. And so she's dealing with, like, the betrayal of that. Anyway, I think this was more focused and therefore more successful. I think this is the second best in the series. It's just a really fun world. I really like when he focuses. His books are just great. So I hope that this bodes well for more books to come, because at the end, there's some interesting stuff that comes together from the previous books and suggests an interesting new direction the series could take. So this, I'm happy to report, is back on a favorites list, this series. And then number 3 is a sci-fi mystery series. This is the first in the series of the Dorothy Gentleman novella series that's going to be coming out from Tor.com by Olivia Waite. And really, it's a novella. I don't want to tell you too much. I'm just going to tell you the log line, which is lesbian Sherlock detectives in space. And it's just fun. I had a good time with this. This was a really satisfying little whodunit. It had some very intriguing character stuff that it's suggesting that make me excited for it going forward. And this was just great. It just really scratched the itch for me of what I want from like a novella, like a mystery novella. So if you're into the kind of speculative elements and you like a novella, just read it. It's just fantastic. Okay. And then my top 4.5 star of the year is the third in a novella series that is also a sci-fi mystery series, which is, oh gosh, I forget what the series is called. The first one is The Mimicking of Known Successes, but I don't remember what they call the actual series of this. Hello. I am talking about the potency of ungovernable impulses while holding up the imposition of unnecessary obstacles. This is the second book, and I forgot that I don't have a copy of the book I'm actually talking about, so just popping in to clarify, this is the second book. The one that I am talking about for this year is The Potency of Ungovernable Impulses. This is one of those series with kind of word salad titles, and I frankly just got mixed up and confused. Okay, thank you. Anyway, the imposition of unnecessary obstacles, I think, is a real step up from the first 2 books in this series, this novella series, which I very much enjoyed. It also has kind of a Sherlock and Watson type dynamic, except in this case, it's once again lesbians in space. Guess that's something that I vibe with. But this time they are colonizing. The murder by memory is taking place on a spaceship. This is one where they are colonizing Jupiter, or we have colonized Jupiter because we completely trashed the Earth. And one of our characters is a detective and the other is in academia. So all the mysteries have been kind of around this university. And this one, I believe, is meant to be a retelling of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And I just think it was very successful. Sorry, my battery overheated. So I think I was just saying that this is a retelling of The Hound of the Baskervilles. I really liked that. And this one in particular, I feel like we really got to know the characters a lot more in a way that I found really satisfying and like really deepened my enjoyment of the book as a whole. But yeah, I think this was another one, you know, it's a novella, I don't want to give too much away, but just a very satisfying whodunit plot, characters I'm increasingly connected with, really fun world and world building, and just, you know, good themes, good everything. Really enjoyed this. Okay, and then number 1 is my only 5-star book in mystery thriller. I just read it recently, and it is one of the most perfect isolated close circle mysteries I've ever read. As I mentioned earlier, I love the everybody's stuck together, somebody dies, you gotta figure out who done it. My all-time favorite plot. The Labyrinth House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji just delivered completely. It's a book within a book, which I love. It had twists. It didn't have twists, it had surprises, but they were things that were clearly set up for the reader to follow the breadcrumbs to. So when it's revealed, it doesn't feel cheap, it feels earned. And it just, I love the way that this author puts together these kinds of mysteries. And I'm so excited because there's another one coming out next year. I have another one on my TBR, and The Decagon House Murders is another one of my all-time favorite books, which is the first one in this series. And I think he just does this kind of plot the way I like it done. People die early enough in the plot, they're not wondering why it's called a murder mystery and you're just waiting for someone to die. Can't tell, that's a pet peeve of mine that I've encountered a lot this year. It is engaging throughout. This one I think had better character development in some ways than the last one, the first one I read from him. And I just think this just got her done. This was what I want from this kind of book, and just makes me excited to read more from the author. So if you were just looking for a classic murder mystery with a little bit of metatextual thrown in with a book within a book, and some satisfying surprises and turns, then yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough. So that is my list of favorite mystery thrillers of the year, and it just, talking about them all makes me want to reread several of them because they were just really satisfying. And a year a lot of, like I was talking about, fine, good books, but not like excellent books. It just makes me excited. And reminds me that I do have things that I really love in this genre family umbrella. So let me know what you thought of any of these books if you've read them. Let me know if they remind you of any books that you think I would enjoy or you think others would enjoy. And I think that will do it for me. So like if you liked it, hit the bell if you want to know when I'm going to post, all that good stuff. Year-end lists roll on, so keep your eyes open for that. And yeah, I just hope you stay well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!